Have you ever met someone and felt an immediate, inexplicable connection, as if you'd known them your entire life? That moment when time seems to slow, the world fades into the background, and you're struck with the uncanny feeling that this meeting was somehow arranged by forces beyond your understanding? Science tells us we live in a universe governed by cause and effect, probability and chance. Yet throughout human history, across every culture and civilization, people have reported experiences that seem to transcend mere coincidence, especially when it comes to profound human connections. What if these seemingly random encounters are actually messages from the universe? What if, as Carl Jung proposed, there exists a hidden order beneath the chaos, an invisible thread connecting certain souls together for purposes we're only beginning to understand? This exploration isn't just about romance or finding the one. It's about understanding the mysterious ways our unconscious minds communicate with the world around us, creating patterns and synchronicities that guide us toward people who will catalyze our deepest transformation. By the final minute of this video, you'll understand why certain relationships have affected you so profoundly and how to recognize when the universe is trying to bring someone significant into your life. If you've ever wondered why certain people appear in your life at exactly the right moment, prepare to unlock the hidden language of destined encounters. The answers might change how you view every relationship you've ever had, and every connection yet to come. For Carl Jung, one of the 20th century's most influential psychological thinkers, the most meaningful relationships in our lives are never entirely accidental. While conventional psychology focuses primarily on our conscious choices and rational decisions, Jung ventured deeper into the mysterious territory of the unconscious, where he discovered patterns that defy simple explanation. Jung proposed that beneath our personal unconscious lies something far more profound, what he termed the collective unconscious, a vast repository of universal memories, symbols, and archetypes shared across humanity. This collective dimension of our psyche operates according to its own logic, often communicating through dreams, intuitions, emotions, and most importantly for our discussion, through significant encounters with others. When we experience the peculiar sense that we were meant to meet someone, Jung would suggest we're detecting the synchronistic harmony between our inner psychological landscape and external events. Such experiences aren't supernatural in the traditional sense, but rather reflect the operation of deeper psychological processes that connect our inner and outer worlds in meaningful ways. The collective unconscious contains what Jung called archetypes, universal patterns or models that exist within all humans across time and culture. These include figures like the mother, the wise old man, the trickster, the hero, and importantly for romantic connections, the anima and the animus. When we meet someone who strongly activates these archetypal energies within us, the encounter often feels destined or fated. This sensation is particularly powerful during what Jung called the individuation process, the lifelong journey towards psychological wholeness and self-realization. Along this path, we encounter people who seem perfectly designed to help us integrate disparate aspects of ourselves, face our shadows, and discover our authentic potential. These aren't just pleasant social interactions, they're profound catalysts for psychological growth. The universe, seen through a Jungian lens, doesn't arrange these meetings through supernatural intervention, but through the mysterious interplay between our deepest psychological needs and the outer world. As Jung himself wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." One of Jung's most revolutionary concepts was what he termed synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by conventional causality but seem connected through significance rather than cause and effect. This principle provides a framework for understanding those uncanny moments when the universe seems to conspire to bring two people together. Synchronicity occurs when an internal psychological state aligns with an external event in a way that feels meaningfully connected, despite having no causal relationship. Jung developed this concept after observing countless instances where patients would describe dreams or thoughts that seemed to predict or coincide with external events in statistically improbable ways. In relationships, synchronicity often manifests as a series of unlikely coincidences that lead to an important meeting. Consider these examples. You dream about a stranger with distinctive features, only to meet someone matching that exact description the following day. You pick up a book that randomly falls from a shelf, and it contains passages that perfectly address your current emotional struggle, just before meeting someone who embodies the solution. You repeatedly encounter the same person in different locations across a city, country, or even internationally, defying statistical probability. You think intensely about someone from your past, only to receive a message from them moments later after years of silence. You miss your usual train, only to meet a significant person on the delayed connection. What makes these occurrences synchronistic rather than merely coincidental is their psychological significance. They feel deeply meaningful rather than random. The event resonates with something essential in your psyche. Jung documented countless cases where synchronicity appeared at pivotal moments in people's lives, often serving as guideposts toward important relationships or life directions. In his view, these experiences reveal the underlying unity between psyche and matter, between our inner world and external reality. They suggest that the universe operates not just through cause and effect, but through meaning and purpose. Synchronicity often intensifies during major life transitions, periods of psychological transformation, spiritual awakening, or emotional crisis. During these threshold times, our unconscious becomes more active and permeable, allowing synchronistic events to emerge more frequently. Many people report meeting their significant others during precisely such pivotal life phases. The remarkable aspect of synchronicity is that it doesn't happen passively. The more psychologically awake and attentive we become, the more we notice these meaningful coincidences. As Jung noted, synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see it. This suggests that developing psychological awareness may actually increase our ability to recognize when the universe is trying to bring someone significant into our lives. These synchronistic events don't eliminate free will or conscious choice, they simply provide meaningful opportunities. The universe might arrange a seemingly impossible meeting, but what happens after that initial encounter remains largely within our control. Synchronicity opens doors, we must still choose whether to walk through them. When we feel powerfully drawn to someone, particularly in those first electric moments of connection, we're often not seeing them clearly as they actually are. What we're experiencing is largely a phenomenon Jung called projection, the unconscious attribution of our own qualities, desires, fears, and potential onto another person. Projection acts as a psychological mechanism through which we externalize aspects of ourselves that remain unconscious. In essence, we see in others what we have not yet recognized or accepted within ourselves. This applies to both our most admired qualities, intelligence, creativity, courage, and our disowned shadows, anger, jealousy, neediness. In the early stages of significant relationships, projection creates a fascinating dynamic. We feel we've met someone who completes us or who embodies qualities we've always sought, when in reality, we're often encountering aspects of our own psyche that have remained dormant or unexpressed. As Jung stated, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This projective mechanism explains why certain relationships feel so intensely meaningful from the beginning. The universe isn't merely introducing us to an interesting stranger. It's arranging a meeting with disowned parts of ourselves, creating a mirror through which we might finally see what has been hidden from our conscious awareness. Consider how often we fall in love with someone's specific qualities, their creative passion, their emotional depth, their intellectual curiosity, their spontaneity. Jung would suggest that our attraction to these traits indicates aspects of ourselves longing for expression. The person hasn't given us something new, they've awakened something that was already there. This understanding transforms how we view chemistry or love at first sight. These experiences aren't simply about finding someone compatible, they're about encountering a person who activates powerful unconscious content within us. The universe, working through the principles of synchronicity and psychological attraction, brings us face to face with what we most need to integrate. Projection creates an initially enchanted state, what poets and songwriters have celebrated as the magic of new love. During this phase, we see the other person through the golden light of projection, attributing to them qualities that may only partially match reality. This isn't necessarily problematic. It's often a necessary first stage in significant relationships. However, projection also explains why disillusionment eventually occurs in many relationships. As familiarity grows and psychological defenses relax, we begin to see the actual person rather than our projected image. This transition can be painful but essential, the point where a relationship either dissolves or transforms into something more authentic. Jung believed that conscious relationships require the gradual withdrawal of projections. As we reclaim the qualities we've projected and recognize them as our own, we become capable of seeing our partner more clearly. This doesn't diminish love, rather, it transforms romantic infatuation into something deeper, a meeting between two whole individuals rather than two incomplete people seeking completion through each other. The withdrawal of projections represents one of relationships' greatest gifts. Through conscious relationship, we recover disowned aspects of ourselves while simultaneously discovering the authentic other person beneath our projections. This dual process of self-recovery and genuine connection forms the foundation of what Jung considered mature love. While we often imagine destined relationships as harmonious and effortless, Jung's psychology suggests something more complex. The most transformative relationships, those that the universe seems deliberately to arrange, frequently involve significant challenges, conflicts, and discomfort. This is because they activate what Jung called the shadow. The shadow represents everything we have repressed, denied, or failed to develop in ourselves. It contains not only our negative or dark qualities but also positive potentials, creative energies, and capacities that have remained unexpressed due to family conditioning, cultural expectations, or personal fears. The shadow exists because we all develop a persona, a social mask that displays certain acceptable traits while concealing others. When the universe brings a significant person into our lives, they often serve as a powerful catalyst for shadow work. This explains why relationships that feel meant to be are frequently the most challenging. They don't just connect us with someone compatible, they connect us with someone who will inevitably trigger our unresolved issues, wounds, and undeveloped potentials. This dynamic manifests in several recognizable patterns. 1. Immediate, intense attraction followed by equally intense conflict. 2. Repeated arguments about seemingly minor issues that generate disproportionate emotional reactions. 3. Feeling simultaneously drawn toward and repulsed by the same person. 4. Experiencing familiar emotional wounds despite choosing someone completely different from previous partners. 5. Finding yourself behaving in ways that surprise or disturb you in the presence of a particular person. These challenging dynamics aren't signs that the relationship lacks cosmic blessing. Rather, they indicate that the relationship is serving its deeper purpose, bringing unconscious material into awareness where it can be recognized, processed, and integrated. As Jung famously observed, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Shadow activation explains why many significant relationships go through periods of intense turbulence. What's being stirred isn't simply interpersonal conflict but intrapsychic material, our own unresolved traumas, unacknowledged desires, and undeveloped aspects seeking expression and integration. This perspective transforms how we understand relationship difficulties. The person who most frustrates us is often the one offering our greatest opportunity for growth. Their presence in our lives isn't random. It's precisely their ability to activate our shadow material that makes them significant. The universe, Jung might suggest, knows exactly who can best catalyze our necessary psychological development. It's crucial to distinguish between relationships that activate productive shadow work and those that are simply destructive. A relationship with shadow elements will challenge us but ultimately lead toward greater wholeness and integration. A toxic relationship, by contrast, keeps us trapped in repetitive patterns without movement toward healing. The shadow's emergence doesn't mean a relationship is doomed. In fact, relationships where both partners are willing to engage consciously with shadow material often develop extraordinary depth and resilience. When we stop blaming our partners for triggering difficult emotions and instead ask, "What is this revealing about me?" we transform the relationship into a powerful vehicle for mutual growth. Jung believed that no significant relationship is free from shadow elements. The question isn't whether shadows will emerge, but how we'll respond when they do. Will we project blame externally, flee from discomfort, or repeat unconscious patterns? Or will we recognize the shadow's appearance as an invitation to greater self-knowledge and psychological integration? When we choose the latter path, relationship difficulties become meaningful rather than merely painful. We understand that the universe hasn't matched us with someone to provide endless comfort, but to facilitate our evolution towards psychological wholeness. In this light, even the most challenging relationship dynamics can be recognized as gifts, demanding, perhaps, but profoundly transformative. Among Jung's most fascinating contributions to understanding relationship dynamics was his concept of the anima and animus, the contrasexual archetypes within each person. The anima represents the feminine qualities within a man's psyche, while the animus embodies masculine elements within a woman's psyche. These inner figures greatly influence our attractions, projections, and the nature of our significant relationships. According to Jung, these inner masculine and feminine aspects aren't simply psychological constructs, they function as intermediaries between our conscious ego and the deeper collective unconscious. They act as internal guides, messengers, and bridges to our soul's wisdom. When we meet someone who strongly resonates with our anima or animus, the connection feels transcendent, as if orchestrated by forces beyond ourselves. The anima/animus initially develops through our relationship with opposite-sex parents or caregivers, then evolves through cultural influences, relationships, and inner psychological development. These internal figures exist at various levels of development, from primitive to highly refined, and significantly affect how we perceive and relate to potential partners. When the universe brings us into contact with someone who closely matches our inner anima or animus image, the attraction is immediate and powerful. We feel we found our soulmate or the one. This isn't mere physical attraction or compatibility, it's a profound archetypal recognition. Something in us knows this person, even if we've just met. The intensity of these connections stems from projection. We unconsciously project our anima or animus onto the other person, experiencing them as the embodiment of our soul's counterpart. This explains the otherworldly quality of certain attractions, the sense that we've known someone forever, the feeling that they see us at a soul level. Such projections create a double-sided dynamic. On one hand, they generate the magical quality of falling in love, where ordinary reality seems transformed into something luminous and meaningful. On the other hand, they eventually lead to disillusionment as we discover the actual person behind our projections. Jung observed that these anima/animus relationships progress through distinct stages. 1. Physical/instinctual level. Attraction based primarily on biological impulses and basic male/female polarities. 2. Romantic/aesthetic level. the other becomes idealized as the perfect romantic partner or aesthetic ideal. 3. Spiritual/wisdom level. The relationship becomes a vehicle for deeper meaning, joint creative endeavors, or spiritual growth. 4. Integrated level. The projection is withdrawn and recognized as an inner reality, allowing for authentic relationship with the other person. Most significant relationships begin at the first or second level, with many never progressing further. However, when the universe brings together two people ready for deeper transformation, the relationship naturally evolves toward the higher levels, often through periods of disillusionment and conflict that force the withdrawal and integration of projections. The anima/animus dynamic explains why certain relationships feel destined despite significant challenges or obstacles. The powerful archetypal energies activated create a magnetic pull that can overcome practical considerations, social barriers, or even geographical distance. When the anima or animus is strongly engaged, people often make extraordinary efforts to maintain connection, feeling that something essential to their soul's journey is at stake. Jung believed that conscious integration of the anima or animus represents one of life's most important psychological achievements. Through relationship with significant others, we gradually internalize qualities we initially experienced only through projection. A man develops his capacity for emotional depth, receptivity, and intuitive wisdom. A woman cultivates her logical thinking, assertiveness, and directed action. This integration process doesn't diminish attraction or love, it transforms them. As we withdraw and integrate our anima/animus projections, we become capable of seeing our partners as they truly are rather than as carriers of our unconscious content. Paradoxically, this often deepens love, replacing the initial intoxication of projection with a more grounded appreciation of the other's authentic being. The universe, working through synchronicity and archetypal attraction, often brings us into contact with people who activate our anima or animus at precisely the developmental moment when we're ready for transformation. These encounters aren't random, they're synchronized with our inner psychological readiness for growth. This explains why significant relationships often appear after major life transitions, psychological breakthroughs, or periods of introspection. In Jung's psychology, the ultimate aim of human development is what he called individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, integrating all aspects of the psyche into a coherent, authentic whole. This journey isn't primarily intellectual or philosophical, it's lived through our experiences, particularly through significant relationships. Jung observed that certain relationships serve as crucial vehicles for individuation. When the universe brings someone significant into our lives, it's often not merely for companionship or pleasure, but to facilitate this deeper process of becoming whole. Through the mirror of relationship, we encounter parts of ourselves that might otherwise remain hidden, denied, or undeveloped. The individuation process involves several key psychological movements that relationships powerfully catalyze. 1. Integration of the shadow, acknowledging and accepting the disowned aspects of ourselves. 2. Withdrawal of projections, recognizing what we've attributed to others that actually belongs to us. 3. Development of the anima/animus, cultivating the contrasexual aspects of our psyche. 4. Encounter with the self, connecting with the organizing center of the total personality, beyond the ego. Significant relationships touch on all these dimensions, which explains their transformative power. They don't just add something to our lives, they fundamentally change who we are. As Jung noted, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. This transformative quality distinguishes what we might call soul connections from more ordinary relationships. The latter may provide comfort, pleasure, or practical support, but they don't necessarily challenge us to grow. Soul connections, those the universe seems intentionally to arrange, inevitably push us toward greater wholeness, often through challenges that force us to confront our limitations and expand beyond them. The individuation process through relationship isn't always comfortable. It frequently involves periods of disillusionment as projections are withdrawn, moments of intense conflict as shadow material emerges, and passages of profound uncertainty as familiar psychological structures dissolve. The relationship that most powerfully serves our individuation may not be the one that feels easiest or most affirming to our ego. Jung observed that relationships supporting individuation typically move through distinct phases. 1. Projection and enchantment, initial attraction and idealization of the other. 2. Disillusionment and conflict, recognition of differences and activation of shadow material. 3. Conscious relationship, withdrawal of projections and acceptance of the other as they are. 4. Individuation as partners, mutual support for each other's authentic development. These stages aren't strictly linear. Relationships may cycle through them repeatedly, with each passage reaching deeper levels. What distinguishes relationships that support individuation is the willingness of both partners to use relational challenges as opportunities for self-knowledge rather than merely as problems to solve or avoid. The universe, in bringing us together with certain people, creates the optimal conditions for our individuation. Sometimes this means connecting us with people who reflect our highest potential. Other times it means bringing us into contact with those who activate our deepest wounds. Both serve the soul's journey toward wholeness. Jung's perspective transforms how we understand relationship success. Rather than measuring relationships by their longevity, comfort, or social approval, we might evaluate them by how effectively they facilitated our becoming more fully ourselves. By this standard, even painful relationships that eventually end may be considered successful if they've significantly advanced our individuation. This doesn't justify remaining in destructive relationships. Individuation requires appropriate boundaries and self-care. However, it does suggest that relationship challenges, when approached consciously, represent opportunities rather than merely obstacles. The person who most frustrates us may also be our most important teacher. When two people commit to supporting each other's individuation process, something remarkable happens. The relationship becomes not just a personal bond but a container for mutual transformation. As Jung described it, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. That is to say, when the individual remains undivided and does not become conscious of his inner contradictions, the world must perforce act out the conflict and be torn into opposite halves. How do we recognize when the universe is bringing someone significant into our life? Jung's psychology offers several practical insights for discerning these meaningful connections from ordinary encounters. 1. The quality of the first meeting. Pay attention to first encounters that have a numinous quality, a sense of recognition, déjà vu, or unusual emotional resonance. Jung noted that significant relationships often begin with a moment of what he called participation mystique, a sense of psychological merger or boundary dissolution that feels simultaneously familiar and extraordinary. These initial meetings frequently involve synchronistic elements, unusual circumstances that seem improbable, multiple coincidental factors that had to align for the meeting to occur, a sense of timelessness during the interaction, striking symbolic elements that later prove meaningful. 2. Dreams and unconscious signals. The unconscious often signals important connections through dreams, either before meeting someone or during the early stages of knowing them. Pay attention to dreams featuring unknown figures who feel significant, places or scenarios that later manifest in reality, recurring symbols or themes that connect to the new person, dreams with unusual emotional intensity or clarity. Jung found that significant relationships are frequently preceded by dreams that seem to prepare the psyche for an important encounter. The unconscious often knows before our conscious mind does that someone significant is entering our life. 3. Activation of complex emotional patterns. Meaningful connections often activate complex emotional responses beyond simple attraction or interest. You might notice unusually strong emotional reactions, positive or negative. Feeling simultaneously attracted and resistant. The surfacing of old wounds or unresolved issues. A sense of familiarity that can't be explained by your actual history. These complex responses signal that the relationship is engaging deeper layers of the psyche, a hallmark of connections that serve our individuation. 4. Symbolic coincidences. Pay attention to symbolic patterns or coincidences surrounding a new connection. Repeated numbers, names, or meaningful words. Objects, animals, or natural phenomena that appear with unusual frequency. Songs, books, or movies that seem to reflect your situation. Themes or messages that appear across multiple contexts. Jung observed that significant relationships often manifest within a field of synchronistic events, as if the entire psychoid reality is organizing around this connection. 5. Acceleration of psychological growth. Notice whether encountering this person catalyzes unusual psychological movement. Sudden insights into long-standing patterns. Creative inspiration or new ways of thinking. Recognition of aspects of yourself previously unknown. Rapid shifts in perspective or priorities. When the universe brings someone significant into our lives, the pace of our psychological development often accelerates noticeably. 6. Physical and energetic responses. The body often registers significant connections before the conscious mind fully comprehends them. Unusual physical sensations during interactions. Energy shifts that feel palpable or distinctive. Heightened sensory awareness in their presence. Physiological responses that differ from your typical patterns. Jung recognized that archetypal encounters register not just mentally but somatically. The entire organism responds to the significance of the meeting. 7. The test of time and depth. While initial signs may indicate significance, Jung emphasized that truly meaningful connections reveal themselves through sustained interaction. The relationship continues to unfold new layers of meaning. Initial attraction evolves rather than diminishes. Challenges lead to greater depth rather than disengagement. Both individuals experience growth through the connection. The universe's truly significant introductions tend to develop depth and complexity over time, rather than burning brightly but briefly. In the Jungian view, significant relationships are never merely personal preferences or social arrangements. They are expressions of a profound dialogue between our individual souls and the larger patterns of the universe. When we feel that certain connections are meant to be, we're sensing this underlying conversation. The universe speaks to us through symbols, synchronicities, dreams, and encounters that seem to carry a mysterious significance. Our task isn't to passively wait for perfect relationships to appear, but to develop the psychological awareness to recognize and respond to the universe's communication. This doesn't mean surrendering to fate or destiny in a fatalistic sense. Jung emphasized that consciousness and choice remain essential. The universe may bring significant people into our path, but how we respond to these encounters, whether we recognize their significance, whether we do the necessary inner work, whether we commit to the relationship's transformative potential, remains our responsibility. The most profound relationships are those where both cosmic arrangement and conscious commitment converge. The universe initiates, we respond. The universe creates the conditions for meaningful encounter. We must do the work of making that encounter bear fruit. As you reflect on the significant relationships in your own life, those that have most deeply changed you, challenged you, or revealed you to yourself, consider the possibility that they weren't random occurrences but meaningful introductions arranged by forces wiser than your conscious mind. Pay attention to new encounters that carry that sense of significance. Notice the synchronicities, the emotional depth, the archetypal resonances. The universe continues its conversation with your soul through the people it brings into your life, not just romantic partners, but friends, mentors, even challenging figures who catalyze your growth through conflict. Remember Jung's profound insight: your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The universe's most important message isn't delivered through external signs alone, but through how these outer events connect with your inner truth. By becoming more conscious of this dialogue between soul and universe, between inner and outer realities, you develop the capacity to recognize and honor the truly significant connections in your life, those that aren't merely pleasant or convenient, but transformative, those that challenge you to become more fully yourself. The next time you feel that unmistakable sense of recognition upon meeting someone new, that feeling that something greater than chance has brought you together, pay attention. The universe may indeed be sending you a sign, inviting you into a connection that will transform not just your life circumstances, but your very soul.